right, so in chapter 3 of Lord of the Flies, we open with a scene of Jack hunting. And what is it? This kind of later in the chapter is spoken about. Jack is hunting by himself, and again, he fails to actually catch anything. And at this point in the story, there's actually been some kind of a time skip a little bit. The boys have all become more attributed, or not attributed, a little more comfortable. They're all a little more comfortable with the island. You can see there are physical changes described in the book. Most of the boys have longer hair, the sunshine from being exposed to the light all day, every day, so is said to have changed the hair color of some of the boys and given them, especially Jack, because of his, what is it, because he's a redhead. He has skin burns or a sunburn on his back and a lot of deep freckles that have kind of grown because of his skin's sensitivity to the sun. Um, so yeah, that's what the book opens with. It opens with that kind of description of Jack hunting in the forest and failing again to catch a pig. And what Jack does after he realizes that, he's done for now, he goes and he talks to Ralph on the beach. And Ralph seems hyper focused on building huts, right, for the people, not the people, for the group. Um, and so since he's building the huts, was it Jack tries to get his attention twice before actually getting it, um, and was it Ralph and Simon are there building, I think, the third hut that they will actually have. Um, the next thing that happens is, what is it? And so that kind of parallel, there's a parallel drawn because Jack and Ralph are both experiencing difficulties in what they do. Um, Jack is having a difficult time like actually catching things. They're a bunch of 6 to 13-year-olds that are put on an island from what seems to be upper class kind of English society. I don't expect them to know how to hunt a pig, right? And so there are a lot of issues with how that's going. And then Ralph goes at length and he says, I'm mad at everybody here because nobody helps me except Simon. They all said, oh, the shelters are necessary, and they all will like to use the shelters after they're built, but nobody actually wants to do the work. And so they both kind of have a parallel in their leaderships, kind of facing, or not really leaderships, but the routes that they took um, as their character develops, kind of those troubles. There's definitely a parallel there, and I feel that Jack and Ralph are definitely supposed to be almost foils of one another. And so that is definitely something to keep uh, thinking about as we walk through the book. And if you're reading it on your own, you definitely want to look for parallels between Jack and Ralph. Um, so Ralph becomes upset because his job is really to focus kind of everybody, and Jack seems hyper focused on hunting. And Ralph has clearly said, and was voted on by everybody, that shelters would be one of the most important things that go on. Yeah, sorry. Um, and Jack hasn't contributed, and nobody else has contributed. So in his kind of frustration with the entire group, Ralph kind of unloads a little bit on Jack, and Jack doesn't really take that too well, even though there is some truth to what Ralph is saying. Jack is, in a way, not contributing. Ralph continuously points out that although Jack says, we want meat, and the group wants meat, and we want to be able to eat well, Ralph points out, you haven't been able to deliver on that promise. And he points that out several times, and it becomes, it almost pushes them to a boiling point. Several times, Ralph and Jack have to step back and reassess how angry they are and kind of recalibrate so that they can have a better conversation. And while they are having their conversations, they discuss kind of the building stress in the group. The little ones are crying almost every night and shrieking and talking in the night through the night because they're having nightmares still about the snake, and it has become so bad that the word snake is actually something that both Ralph and Jack cringed at when Simon brought up the idea that there might be a snake in the forest. And one thing that is exposed in the story is that Jack does think that, and this may be some childhood naivety, but Jack thinks that he feels like, even though he knows rationally in his head nothing is hunting him, he feels like he's being hunted. And so he kind of can empathize with the little ones a little bit where Ralph can't, because his thought on the matter is strictly rational. They didn't see a big snake when they were exploring the island the first time around, and they haven't seen a big snake since, and only one kid's seen it, and that kid is still not made a reappearance. So that's something important to kind of note, is that it can be assumed that that child died, the one that was, I think, yeah, in chapter 2, one child goes missing. He is not spoken about in this chapter. After Jack confesses to feeling hunted, Ralph brings some attention to the fire and says, "Oh, we're not getting enough smoke out of it." And Jack continues his thought process about pigs and hunting pigs and things like that. This further frustrates Ralph and saying, "Dude, you are not focused on the right things. You need to get off this shtick about hunting, and you need to like start realizing that that's not the most important thing here. We are here in danger. We need to be rescued." And that's kind of what Ralph's whole position is, at least in this chapter. That's how he characterizes himself, as trying to be responsible, and him being frustrated, and Jack being kind of hyper focused. Again, there's that word. I'll try to choose a different one next time. Hyper focused on hunting and things that aren't so necessary to the survival of the group. What is it? The only thing that Ralph does kind of say as a positive to the group is that Simon, who was pointed out in the first chapter and has been kind of at Ralph's side the whole time when they weren't like exploring, or when Ralph wasn't with Jack one-on-one. Simon was with him building the shelters, and when he got fed up, which he didn't, basically Ralph and Jack walked away from the hut building while Simon was in it, and Simon followed them for a little bit while they were having a conversation, and he veered off and started doing something else. This is actually where the story turns kind of into a little side story, little filler. I thought it was really nice. Simon goes into the forest, and he first off, he helps some little ones get a piece of fruit. Now, this kind of side story slash filler is heavily laced with imagery, and it really speaks to kind of how the island is perceived by this person who is not has not been characterized so far as a main kind of character, really as a side character, one that hasn't had any lines and has really been described as a very quiet character. And so you have this character that goes off on his own, and I really enjoyed that kind of idea. He goes and he does show leadership qualities. He goes and he finds little ones who are complaining and screeching about how they can't get the fruit out of a tree because they're too short, and he assists them, grabs the fruit out of the tree for them and feeds them. And then he continues on through the forest down like a special route that he's found, and he goes and he lays under a big thing of creepers, which is what they're referred to in the book. I think they're just what they kind of seem to be are almost like rose bushes. I think they've got pricks on them, so they'll prick you, but they like grow kind of over things, and so they kind of have one base, but they don't really grow like vines. It's kind of confusing to imagine what a creeper looks like, especially if you're unfamiliar with the term, like I am. And I've read the book, and this is my second go through. But yeah, there's definitely a lot of wonderful imagery in there. And Simon's character is really defined as one that doesn't really need to talk. He's definitely kind of a man of action, I feel. He walks through, helps the people, and then he goes about his business. He walks through, climbs under a mass of creepers, and he just hangs out there and he watches the beautiful imagery as, what is it? William Golding kind of describes it in the story. And so I think some big things that happened in this story, and to kind of take away, is you kind of really see the rift between Jack and Ralph forming, which will eventually turn into something a lot bigger. And so if you're going to read along, you should watch out for that. Um, so yeah, thank you for watching. Please leave a comment if you have any questions on the story, if you have any difference in interpretation. Please leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching and have a good day.